I think before taking the course, I thought of Black bodies as definitely more of an academic term, and sort of it was a term that was used for people to understand how the Black body is sort of just seen as what it can produce, what it can make, and just a very cold, inhuman term. I think that term takes away the humanity of what Black people represent, which is beauty and life. And I think after taking this course, I would think that this term shouldn't be really used as the way that it's being used now, which I think is to represent, another term should be used to represent the life that and the humanity that Black people have inherently, and that when you reduce the body to what it can do, what it can make, what it can be sold for, it really just strips away the humanity of Black people.
I'd say at first I had no real issue with the term Black bodies and hearing it, being thrown around so much. But as I've sat with it for a while, and at this point, I understand some people are just, I don't know if they're trying to be inclusive or what, but when I hear it, it just kind of feels like we're being reduced to just our bodies. And it's usually also paired with a saying like Black and brown bodies, and then whatever the point is. But because there was a time where we were only valued for our bodies, and I feel like sometimes that's still true. So when I hear it, it's yes, we all know we're all bodies, because we're all human, but we're people. So using the word people, I feel is better, because it kind of ties together. We have interests, we have value as not just for our bodies or whatever labor we can produce, but for who we are as people.
Okay, I think the term Black bodies definitely depersonifies Black people and Black experiences. A lot of the time, when you use this term, it's usually a collectivistic representation about Black and brown people. And again, back to the point about depersonification, it takes away so much of our identities and reduces us to just bodies. It also reminds me very much of scientific racism and the construction of the Black identity and the homosexual body, and how all these things are tied in to essentially commodifying Black bodies and commodifying Black experiences. And I think using the term in academia, it might have initially started off as something that was initially harmless, but when you think about the historical context, it just makes it very laden, very historically laden. So yes, please don't use it. I don't like it at all.
I think it's just super dehumanizing. I mean, I haven't heard it in an academic context that much. And so the first time I was exposed to this term, Black bodies, it was really in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement, and in the context of things happening to us. And so when I hear Black bodies, it's always in a negative light. It's always stripping away humanity. And in light of that, I think that when we talk about Black people, we should never forget that they are people first. And so that's how I feel about the term Black bodies. I'm not a fan, because once again, it just strips people of their humanity and of their experience and really commodifies them.
I think it also brings a lot of attention to the trauma that Black people have gone through. It just kind of centers us to, or it just reduces us to the pain and the trauma that we've gone through. Very similar, there was this period in cinema where I guess Hollywood was just releasing movies about Black violence, slavery, 12 Years a Slave, Django Unchained. I mean, I can't remember them all because I didn't watch them all. Oh, When You See Us, all of those the genre of movies were just really focused on Black violence. And I think that's where the term Black bodies really got popularized. But I guess I would like to see us going beyond our bodies and going focusing on our spirit, our souls, and the cultures that we embody.
actually spent most of my life escaping stereotypes, whether it was trying to get the best grades in the class so I wasn't an embarrassment to my family, so I didn't fit into stereotypes about that, black kids don't succeed in school, that they come from troubled homes. Also, just like always trying to be amenable, even when situations are not ones that I should tolerate. And that's been a huge part of my academic career, even from my younger years, just trying to fit in, trying to not be angry, trying to be palatable for most people, because a lot of people that I've been around haven't seen black people, and so it's always tiptoeing around us. And so a lot of my experience has just been try to be the best, try to work 10 times harder just to be seen and to be valued.
I would say that I feel like a lot of black women can relate to the fact that you kind of grow up trying to downplay your blackness, or I guess it depends on where you grow up and, your surroundings. For me, coming from or being a first generation Canadian with my parents immigrating here, education has always been drilled into us, and behaving a certain way, especially when you're around non-black people, has sort of been drilled into us. So that is something that I'm still kind of unlearning. But when it comes to the academic setting, I still find myself sort of holding back sometimes in certain topics or discussions, because it's like, of course she's going to bring this up because she's black or something. But it's things that should be brought up. So I'm trying to teach myself to not hold back and speak up on things, and be loud and proud about my blackness and, my community in general.
For me, growing up, I always hated fitting into what anyone, any type of stereotype. I think walking into rooms where people don't look like you, mostly white spaces, it almost feels like people feel like they know you before they even get to talk to you. They don't really acknowledge your own personal diverse values and perspectives, and sort of just kind of put a label on you and expect you to act a certain way. And that's one thing I always hated, was having an expectation put on you that you're going to be loud. So then I feel like I don't want to be loud, even though maybe I did actually want to be loud and be myself in that moment, but sort of felt limited that people already felt like they knew who I was. And I feel like I always want to be in control in defining who I portray to people and what my personality is like. So I think, being loud, any sort of expectation without that I haven't put out there myself, I think I always wanted to hide away from that and not fit into what other people placed on me without my, permission, I guess.
I think much like other international students that came to Canada, we were not very acutely aware about our identities and how they essentially positioned into the Canadian cultural context. So for me, I've always been an avid, my presence is known. If I'm in school, if I'm in class, wherever it is that I am, that it's me, because I like talking. I always have things to say. And when I came to Canada, I just became very distinctly aware about my identity as a black woman and the limitations that purportedly put on me, and just having those new restraints being essentially imposed on my life just made me try to shrink myself and make me try to be less visible in academic spaces. And I think as the years have gone by, I've just done everything in my power to reclaim those spaces. But it's definitely a delicate balance between wanting to be visible and also not wanting to be the voice of representation for black people, because sometimes when you're vocal, people tend to look to you all the time. When there's discussions on slavery and racism, it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm not the author. I'm not an authoritative figure on this just because I'm black. So it's just interesting finding a delicate balance. But I would say that just taking up space has been one of the biggest things that I've tried to fight against. And
Thank you. In terms of stereotypes that I try to avoid, I think one of them is being the loud black girl. I feel like I don't like to bring too much attention to myself most of the time, and being the loud black girl comes with like implications that I know so much about things when I really don't. I avoid being loud because of my Nigerian heritage as well. A lot of people look at that, especially in high school, a lot of people looked at that as like a downside. So in order to not bring a lot of attention to myself, I just kind of kept quiet, subdued, and kind of affected me because I wasn't able to express myself as much as I would have liked to.
I think as a black woman in academia, I've definitely had a very multifaceted experience. It's just been like an endless cycle of constantly trying to prove myself and be validated and revalidated and reminding myself that I don't need the validation from some of these people just because they don't have the same experiences as I do. I feel like I always have to go above and beyond. It might also very much be like my cultural upbringing and the fact that my parents are very Ghanaian. So there's this desire to always go above and beyond, and sometimes it's just so difficult because when you're doing the most and it feels like your contributions are not being recognized, it's very frustrating. I had a prof tell me once that the 90s in the humanities are reserved for excellent work. And my first thought was, what's that got to do with me? Like, why are you telling me that this is an obstacle? And, well, it could have very well just been like a general disposition, but when you factor in the fact that I'm black and a woman, and the odds are not necessarily stacked against me, you tend to realize that some of these undertones may not be as harmless as they seem. But the one thing that I would say has definitely helped me has been just my constant reaffirmation of my abilities and my capacities and not letting these conceptions of who I am and what I can achieve draw me down, and just constantly upholding the values that I strive.
For sure. I think being a black woman in academia has been like incredibly isolating. First year, my first 2 years of university were like horrible because I was one of five black people in our planning cohort. So I found I was in a lot of situations where, weirdly enough, like people didn't want to sit beside me, and people didn't want to take me to be in their groups. And I was a very shy person, still I am now, but like back then, like it was very hard for me to go out there and be like, hey, can I join your group? So I was doing a lot of work on my own, which was very not great. And so yeah, it's been very, very isolating, very sad. But I think also in that isolation, I was able to create a community. You know, I wasn't just the only black person. I was one of five. So I was able to create a community or create a group of people around me that we went through the same experiences, and we're able to help each other out and like become great friends till today. And I think also in terms of self-esteem, it wasn't great. It wasn't a great feeling to feel like you were unwanted and undervalued, and your thoughts weren't as important as others, especially in planning that has to do with a lot of social issues. And it's weird that like people, it's like the extreme spectrum of things. Like they either don't want to hear from me at all, or they definitely want to hear from me because I'm black and only because I'm a black voice, and not because I actually have something valuable to say. But I think at the end of it, you know what? I made the best out of it, and, you know,
Okay. I think for me, being in this academic space, it's a couple of feelings. I think one feeling is loneliness. I think sometimes when you're in spaces and you're the only, like when I'm the only black woman in a class or any other space, it feels really lonely, and you don't really have, you know, other people that you can kind of relate to in your own experiences, and it feels I don't know, it can feel isolating as well because other people in your class sometimes make judgments of you, or even it's in the unsaid things too. Sometimes it's not really anyone really saying anything, but you just sort of feel like you don't belong in a space and people don't really give you that, those feelings of like belonging to like be yourself. And I think I realized it the most, I think going throughout my whole undergrad and not really having a lot of other Black women in my class, I realized in this particular class, having other Black women who've been so supportive and just have had such amazing perspectives, it's felt really good to not feel like you're the only one, and that other people are there to relate to you, to uplift you, and that, you know, we're all sort of going through this thing together. So I appreciate that. Shout out to Ola and Kalki.
No, for real. Shout out to that.
So I feel like being a Black woman in this sort of predominantly white academic space, or predominantly non-Black even, has been something that I'm only just now starting to, you know, get over. But I'm already in my 4th year, so it's taken almost my whole undergraduate career to sort of come to terms with it. And I'm only just now starting to see a couple more people that look like me in my classes. It's one thing to see people, or Black people or Black women specifically, around campus or just around the city, but in my actual classes, I've always been one of the few or only Black people, and then almost always one of the only Black women in the class specifically. So it's definitely taken a toll. It's sort of played into this imposter syndrome sort of thing that I still grapple with. Like, sometimes I feel like I don't know enough, or I'm not qualified enough to speak on or, you know, participate in classes. But that's something that I'm unlearning as well.
If I was to talk about what it means to be a Black woman in academia, I would say it's an experience. I think that the first thing, too, is there's a constant feeling that I don't belong, not only because I'm one of the few Black people in the room, one of the few Muslim people in the room, the only Black Muslim person in the room. There's also not people who look like me in positions that I want to be with, in positions that I want to be in. So I see myself continuing in a career in academia, and not seeing a lot of people who look like me in those roles almost makes me feel as if those roles are unattainable. And also just, you know, being a woman in academia in general, not only do you battle with these feelings internally, but you're constantly questioned and constantly belittled. I'm sure everyone has experienced mansplaining, but I've experienced white-splaining too. And, you know, constantly doubting myself, being gaslit constantly, thinking that you don't know things when you've been taught the same things that everyone else. You're at a level playing field, you have the same credentials. And so sometimes I even doubt, you know, can I even reach those places because I feel like I don't have the qualifications that I need to. And I constantly shock myself. And I think part of that has to do with confidence, but part of that also has to do with the way academia works and the way in which we make people feel as though they aren't able to reach these places. Yeah.
Ooh, white splaining. It's a good one. What does having other Black women in this space mean to you? That's what it means to her.
Does anyone want to start?
I think it's
Go.
I think it's uplifting. It's definitely nice to have someone in your corner, especially in a predominantly white space, white male space, and it's nice to have someone else there that's going through the same experiences as you, and like we can validate each other, we could talk about like the microaggressions we went through today, or for the week, or for the year, or whatever. But yeah, it's nice to be validated and uplifted by other women who are going through the same things as you.
Yeah.
I think validated is the key word, because I feel like a lot of my experience has felt like me not belonging. And actually, I think we've actually collectively went through this thing where someone questioned whether we go here.
Yeah.
So having someone who looks like you be in the same space is like telling you, hey, you belong here and you deserve to be here. Especially like if you are in the same program, and you know Waterloo is a competitive school. So I think it's validation is the key word here, like feeling like you belong and feeling like you deserve to be here. And there's a space for you.
Another thing as well for me, it just feels safe. I would say.
Yeah.
Like every single time I'm around Black women, around like people that have the same values as me, I just feel safe. I feel like I don't have to wear a mask. I can bring my full self. I can just be wherever I want to be. I can just be comfortable. I can just exist without having to think about my identity and the complexities of my identity. And I think I mentioned this previously about like living in Ghana versus here, and just becoming very acutely aware of the fact that I'm Black and the sets and demarcations. Like I knew about this, but like when you're transporting, the experience is very different. So like being around other Black people, I don't have to carry those burdens anymore. I can just exist and be free.
I was just gonna say, to go off what Belinda says, it feels like easy. It's not. It doesn't feel like a burden. It feels just easy to be able to talk and live and support people that have gone through the same experiences as you, and validate what you're going through. And it's like a constant everyday thing to feel like you don't belong in a space. It really matters when people are like that around you.
And I also want to say, like, this is also like my first time meeting some of these girls, and immediately I feel like safe, and like I don't have to put on this like performance like when you first meet someone, like, you know, to have that good first impression, whatever. Like I just feel like I can be me, and I immediately felt that when I like met you guys. So like what they were saying, it's like that feeling of comfort and community, and especially when you started out your school career, not seeing much of people who look like you or understand you, it's like a weight lifted off your shoulders when you're finally in this kind of space.
Oh, guys!
Okay, group hug! Yay! Get in there! Thank you, Miss Director.